Not every day you get your hands on some tech that not a lot of people out there get to play with, unless you're buying it from Japan or live in Japan or have some access. And I was very fortunate to get my hands on this. This is the Leitz Phone 2 from Leica. This is Leica's own phone. This is not a collaboration piece, let's say from Xiaomi and Leica or Huawei from Leica. This is Leica's own phone, only sold in Japan via SoftBank. Now, of course, you can export them if you want, but you are going to pay a premium for that. Now, if you really want that, go for it. You can use it outside of Japan in other markets. I've been using it here in Singapore, but you will have some Japanese apps on there that, unless you read Japanese, you won't know what they stand for or do. And I don't even know if you can do firmware updates, because I've got this version here, which is a pre-production sample that I've had in my hands for the past couple months, and I've not really got any firmware updates. I've got Android security updates, but nothing from Leica or from SoftBank to update the firmware. So I don't know. We're going to talk about this phone in terms of the design, the aesthetics, and of course the cameras. That 1-inch 47.2 sensor on this. Leica likes 1-inch sensors. We've seen it in the Xiaomi 12S Ultra, and we're seeing another camera like that here in the Leitz Phone 2. Now, it's not going to be a full review here because, as I mentioned, it is pre-production firmware, but I can kind of give you a gist of what this phone's like to use from someone who does shoot Leica, who understands the ethos, the DNA, how that's implemented into this phone, some of the pros, some of the cons. So let's get down to talking about this. Now, the design on this is beautiful. It's very reminiscent of the Leitz Phone 1, but it has been improved slightly. And I didn't get a chance to play with that phone, by the way, but I did see it in person. It is very sleek. It only comes in one color, which is white. And I love the sides on this. This kind of like beveled, and it just feels very well engineered, and it feels flat, and it feels very grippy in the hands, and the display is flat. There's no curvature on the sides of the display, which I appreciate. I just don't like that because you lose real estate on displays when you have that. And also you get a lot of false touches. You don't get that on this phone here. It is a 6.6-inch OLED display, and it is around 456 ppi for your pixel peepers out there. So it is very vibrant, very sharp. There's a lot of resolution on this display. 2730 by 1260 is the resolution on the display here. Now, it does give you Dolby Vision, HDR10+, hybrid log gamma, all that great stuff inside of this. You get 12 gigabytes of RAM on this. Now, this is LPDDR5 3200 megahertz RAM, 512 gigabytes of onboard storage as well. And as I mentioned, you get that 1-inch 47.2 sensor in this bad boy. Now, you basically only get two cameras in this. I think you get a wide and you get your ultra wide. You don't have a telephoto camera in this because really, Leica M cameras don't really use telephoto. You could arguably say the 135 you can use for the M mount, but you don't have a telephoto lens in this camera. All right, outside of that though, the design is very, very nice. The Leitz branding is on it. It is beautiful. It's the only phone with Leitz branding, and it's got this sort of embossment that you can't touch, but it's underneath the glass. It is very classy. It is very sleek. The camera itself is a Summicron 19mm 1.9 spherical lens on this bad boy. Now, usually Summicrons, unless you go Oppo, or not spherical, but this one, it is. But again, there's AI and there's software enhancements inside of this to give you some of those bokeh or bokeh looks that you want from a Leica lens. Let's say from the Noctilux or the 35, the Summilux, or the 28 Summilux. Those are the three lens options you have inside of this when you go into the Leitz looks. Now I'm going to walk you through some of the UI here, and you can see it on the side of the screen here, where I will show you what it's like to use in terms of the UI. As I mentioned, everything from the font to the way it's designed is very Leica-esque, but it's also very basic Android as well. But let's really talk about the camera here on this, because that's what it's all about here. You've got your video, you've got photo, you got Leitz looks, you got portrait, you got manual, you got night, you've got others, which you can go into that. Then you get your high resolution, you get 8K video, you get your time-lapse, slow motion, M video, VHDR video, all that stuff is inside of there. All right, guys, so trying out the front-facing camera here on the Leitz Phone 2. It's just sort of a test to see how it looks. Again, it is 1080. It's a bit soft. It's not as sharp as the iPhone, but it is what it is. But of course, it's the rear camera, which is the star of the show. I've tried the 8K video, and it works relatively well, but it is a little bit slow on the firmware version that I have in terms of rendering, so I won't go too much into that. But it's really about the photography, because the Leica is about the photography. Now, in terms of that, you really want to go to the main photo app, which is just going to give you, just standard photos. It's going to look very basic, like a standard photo app. But when you go to the Leitz look, that's when it gets very interesting. Now, you have these little circles on the left side, and you can tap on that to change the simulation. So you can go to monochrome, you can go to cinema classic, or cinema contemporary, or original. Now, the monochrome is really nice. Now, it's not a dedicated monochrome sensor like we used to see on the Huawei phones. That was really cool. Hopefully Leica brings that back in the Leitz Phone 3 or does some sort of version of that, because Leica does monochrome. They're one of the best that do monochrome, in my personal opinion. Have you ever used the M10 monochrome? Wow, hello, let's talk about it. Amazing camera, probably arguably the best M camera on the market outside of the M11. As I mentioned before, you can change lenses from the 28 Summilux to the 35 Summilux, which I have tried a lot, and the 50 Noctilux, which I have also tried. Now, in terms of these settings here, basically it's just kind of giving you a little bit of a zoom, 28, 35, and then 50. You're cropping in on each of these, and they will give you a little bit of a different characteristics in terms of the bokeh. And then with the Noctilux, it can get a little bit crazy because you know Noctilux is 0.95. That's a very shallow depth of field. So you got to be very careful with that. Stand a little bit of ways and try that. I've had some success and a lot of failures with that part of the camera app in terms of that. The 28 Lux, pretty good. 35 gets a little bit crazy as well because there's a little bit more bokeh coming into play, but you don't have the control that you would wish you have on this. Not like other smartphone manufacturers when it comes to portrait mode or bokeh, but there is a portrait mode on this camera system, which does give you, that's the notification sound by the way, that does give you a little bit more control in that regard, but not a lot. You can control the bokeh and you can control the skin in terms of the smoothness and how to smooth it out. But that's kind of it. You can go to 0, you can go all the way up to 10 if you want to get somebody really super smooth. And then the bokeh can go to 0 all the way to 10 as well. Outside of that, you have the manual camera here, which you can really just dial down and really, just manually focus on and set your ISO setting, your autofocus, your shutter speed. You can do all that great stuff with Leica M cameras. You're pretty much used to using that. But I will tell you overall, in terms of the camera, it likes to overexpose quite a bit. Now it's very easy to drop the exposure because as soon as you tap on the screen, there's a bar that you can drop the exposure on that. And when you do, your pictures turn out much more beautiful than they do straight out of camera without touching it. But I'm going to show you some sample photos right here to give you an idea of what I've been taking over the past few months. And a lot of them are mundane things, but also some things are shots that I want to take a little bit more time with. But I love the character that this camera gives you. And it does remind me a lot of the early Huawei Leica collaborative phones out there that kind of gave you that really unique color science that Leica was working with Huawei. You see it a little bit with the Xiaomi, but it's a little bit more aggressive with the Xiaomi 12S Ultra. Here it's a little bit more muted, toned down, and I like this coming out of the Leitz phone a lot better. The monochrome is great as well. I would definitely say if you want some of that crispy blacks to drop the exposure a little bit, you're going to be golden in that regard. But I just love the color palettes that they have on this phone. It is beautiful, it is nice, and those also, you'll get a little bit of those colors coming into the video. Not as much as if you're using the Leitz looks for the photography aspect, but you can get a little bit of that because it's built into the camera system overall. In terms of battery life on this phone, in case you're wondering, it does a pretty decent job, I have to say. I mean, I've been using it for the past few months and there's no complaints. If you're a heavy user, you will need to charge this. There is wireless charging to it as well, and it's USB-C, so there'll be no issues in terms of, getting some fast charges out of this. Again, I didn't get a box, I didn't get a manual, I didn't get a lot of these specs that you're probably going to see from other videos out there. But as a photographer, someone who loves the history of Leica, who loves the lore of Leica, it's been an honor to play with it for the past few months. It's not the best of all the camera phones out there if I'm going to go spec for spec. I mean, based on what I'm seeing right here, it's really cool, it's really fun, but there probably are better options out there if you're looking for the premier best camera out of a smartphone to date. Anyway, those are my overall thoughts on the Leitz Phone 2. I hope to get a retail version sometime in the future, and if I do and if things have changed, I will revisit this video and give you guys an update on it. But you can order it online, but you will pay a premium on it. But if you are a Leica fan, or if you're someone that wants to try something different from the other Android options out there, or even iOS for that matter, this might not be a bad option to get. This is cool, this is classy, and it's Leica. With that, take care, stay safe, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye.